Good evening, everybody. System Chalk here with the 111th episode of the House of Light run, the expansion to Book of Hours. Our first one on YouTube, and playing as the Archaeologist. Now, I'm always reluctant to try. I get that housekeeping does not age well, but there's a couple things that I wanted to get out of the way for the week, just because I'm not 100% sure on how things are going to turn out. So I have quite a bit of work that I'm trying to catch up on over the weekend when I'm normally recording these. I'm kind of doing this at the last minute. So what I think I will do is I'll record half of the episodes now so I can buy myself a little more time to do the other ones. But the drawback is that I may not be able to get back to the other ones in time because I'm also trying to keep a little more disciplined in terms of when I go to bed and such. So if there aren't the normal episodes on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, that's just because it's quite a busy week for me. And that just would mean that I didn't have enough time, but I'm trying to maintain a regular schedule as much as I can. And then on top of that, I always like to try and highlight when this happens. They've more been at the start of this series than anything, but I always, when I can, like to mark the comments that I've been getting from people. And again, one of the things that's really nice about the Weather Factory games, whether it's Cultist Simulator or Book of Hours, and of course the forthcoming Traveling at Night, although there's not any content that I've done for that yet, there is definitely a tendency on YouTube for most of the comments that I get to be negative. And these are just deleted, like you don't need to go searching for them. In fact, one of the things that I tended to find was that people, when I commented on this, people would usually say, oh, well, they're not that bad. It's whatever, people, I suppose that's a matter of taste. It probably feels a little bit different when you're not the recipient. But I did mention, in fact, to the developers, so this is a nice reflection of the community, that it was the Weather Factory games that changed that. And I'll still get the handful of nasty stuff, and I will mention that did in fact happen over this weekend, which I wasn't feeling great about because of course there's just other stresses that are coming up. But it did happen to be matched with a few people who either seemed to have discovered this game, or there was actually one comment where somebody said that they found Obsidian through me talking about some of the tools that the community have been using. And I just wanted to take the time, whether you've commented kindly in the past, or whether you happen to be the person who left these sorts of things. I don't know if any of you quite appreciate just how much that stuff can sometimes mean, particularly when, just because of the way that YouTube tends to work, if you get, a handful of videos, these things do tend to be momentum based. So if someone starts commenting on a video in a negative way, usually I think what happens is people feel enabled to sort of pile on. I think that's one of the reasons why they took away the visibility of the downvotes. So what that will usually mean is that one will be a signal of a few other things, a few other comments coming in. And one of the things that's been really nice about the Book of Hours videos, and of course some of the Cultist Simulator videos as well, is that they do tend to arrest the stream of negativity that kind of comes into the comments. It'd be nice if they didn't happen at all, but rather than wish for the impossible, I guess, I don't really want to say it's impossible, but rather than wish for the highly improbable, I did just want to take some time to acknowledge a specific role that a lot of you are having in terms of making it more pleasant to make content on YouTube. And again, I realize that 5 minutes at the start of a video, that's almost always going to be something that turns people off, but I think it's important to just sort of acknowledge what a few of you are doing, because I'm a viewer of some YouTube stuff too, and I almost never leave comments. So for those of you that have done that, I just kind of want to let you know that you are actually, it does make a difference, and it's something that I want to try and, as much as I can, to express gratitude for. Now, you have come for some gameplay, so we will run into that. I'm noticing it looks like my notes are out of date here because I've got a to-do pyroglyphics +2. I think we've committed it, yeah. And I do notice a lingering preliminal meter. Now, I think I was actually going to go pretty hard on preliminal meter. In fact, there it is right there. So I'll start with that today. However, oh yes, okay, right, because we're near the end of autumn. So I was thinking, all right, let's try and read another book, but maybe we don't do that. I'll see where we're sitting. We may take a little bit of a pause before the day starts at the end of autumn, just so I can get a read on what my options are. But okay, memories fade, assistants depart, but the soul is refreshed. So just bear with me a second here. I'm going to update my notes real quick. So from the previous videos and sort of all of the effort that we've been putting in... Oh, that's right, sorry. We also have the sealed cell. So a sign outside this cell reads, "Warning, do not insert keys without first invoking adequate authorization. The key is in the staff room, but I shouldn't turn it without invoking powers to provide a reasonable facsimile of authorization." So we were getting Denzel to open up another one of these rooms. In fact, I think these were rough... No, 12 is not 13. I think we made the decision that we weren't going to go for the Wormnod kitchen because winter was coming up, and so it would be more likely for us to run into a... Well, no, that doesn't make sense because I've got the Wormwood Dream. Anyways, I'll figure out what we're doing with the winter before too long. So in terms of just overall steps that I want to take, so definitely preliminal meter. Now, I already have one of the 5 memories that I'm going to need for that. So I will just make a note here. Okay. Sorry, I really like the tablet that I'm writing on, but it's really trying to show off its handwriting recognition features, and I really don't want those, so... Okay, so preliminal meter +1. So realistically, right, if I take a look at what I have on for my elements of the soul here, if I just say that I need to build 5 memories and, you know, get this up to level 6 and then we're done, okay, you know, that's not the end of the world. Like, I can achieve that quite simply today, but that's really not the kind of ambition that I want for myself. Like, clearly I need to be using these elements of the soul for other things. So let's take a minute here. Right, so these were the spare ones, except for the Queens of the Rivers. So Edict's Liminal's been committed. Enbury and Lapidary, I believe, has been committed. I'm just going to take the second to verify these. Inks of Revelation's definitely been committed. I believe we committed Snow Stories a couple episodes ago. Yep. Sacralamea, yes. Right, and then, okay. So, moving on. So, Edict's Liminal. Oh, sorry, Edict's Inviolable in this case. So, I made a few notes for myself earlier on. I don't think I ever communicated them on the stream, but I sort of gave myself these ranges in on my notes. So I have sort of 4 like Horomachistry at one point. I do need to update these, but Horomachistry at one point had sort of 5 to 7, and then Ithistry started at 5, Illumination 3, and so the idea here was that, you know, I was trying to establish some floors for my various skills, and so the problem here is that a few of these have become a little outdated, but what I've got here are just some general ranges in terms of, I haven't committed something here yet, but kind of here's the range of values where I don't think I would face too much of a consequence. Like I can do any sort of order for these. So as an example of this, Edict's Inviolable, when I sort of reflected on it, its main purpose earlier on was to get me Catwink. Now, I've already got the typewriter now. I've had that for a while, so we're not really making the Catwink for letters. But on the other hand, this can really go anywhere from 3 to 7. And this is true for a number of things that are going to be committed to preservation. So then the question is, well, how do I know to commit it to preservation? And it's because it's got Horamachistry as its other wisdom. And Horamachistry is spoken for. I think I've implicitly or explicitly said that Edict's Martial is going to be going in there. So overall, what that means is that the 3 and the 3, while it's something I would like to read, isn't quite yet something where I feel comfortable reading it, because then that would sort of force me to make some decisions with the lessons that I haven't sort of firmed up yet. I think there's a similar argument that could be made for Orchids and Narcotics. So I'm pretty sure I had a floor that was established for that one, and I think it was 4, so I'm there, but I haven't quite decided. Although I think, because that one is Skolakosophy, if I thought I was going to be putting it into Skolakosophy, I could probably afford to move it a little further up. Now, the Cucurbit Prisoner Records becomes a little bit more interesting, because I think Insects and Nectars is a bit of a unique case. In fact, where is Insects? Oh, right here. Okay. So, well, okay, so I've got a Bosk spot for 4. I'm just noticing that I did have an N written beside Insects and Nectars. Okay, well, let's say let's treat that as a possibility. If nothing else, it's nice to be able to read the Cucurbit Prisoner Records. And I have a fair amount of nectar, although not a guaranteed amount. So this is a possibility, but not a guarantee, just because of the weirdness regarding my my nectar. I need to make the what is it? The Hive's Lament to get the relevant memory. But I'm not opposed to it. So I've got 1 health. Drums and Dances would give us 7. The Knife would give us 2, so that's 10. Yeah, that's a real shame that I don't have Earth Signs. If it's a rainy day, though, we'll definitely apply that to Cucurbit Prisoner Records. Okay, so the other thing that I want to do here is work out... Actually, you know, the other thing that's nice about Insects and Nectars is that if I consider Preliminal Meter, that's a Knock and a Rose. Insects and Nectars is Nectar and Moon. So there's a little bit of overlap between the skills that we need for that, but not a... It's not a showstopper. So the more I'm thinking about this, the more I think Insects and Nectars is the way to go here. So, the tricky part here is that I think I'm going to find I'm 1 short on the memories that I need. So we do have a small advantage with the Bronze Knife. But yeah, it's going to want a memory from me. And unless I can come up with a 2 nectar memory... that's coming up short. So, here's what we're going to do. The weather may change things, but let's get in position for a normal day. It's actually going to be a day where I effectively ignore Denzel's contribution to Preliminal Meter. What I am going to do here is I'm going to... I think I'm going to take my chances on the Cucurbit Prisoner Records. So we'll get an Impulse. Next up, we're going to take a look at what we can use to level up Preliminal Meter. ideally employing things that we have lots of values for. So, you know, I've got 4 whist, so I feel a little more comfortable using that. Also, if I can get more honey scar jasmine, that's nice, but that's a secondary consideration. Okay, so Savage Hymn doesn't help, but the Secret Threshold will, so that's a vac down for me. So that's 2 of 5. Again, remembering here we need Rose and Knock. I think a Pattern's probably a good place to go next. I think we're back to Raptures of Forculus again. So that's 3 of 5, so we just need 2 more. Contradictions is kind of... no, hang on. Contradictions would be for insects and nectars. So I'm not ruling that out, but we want to focus on the current target. So that's Rose or Knock. So Confounding Parable should be an option there. Now, I think I've already done... oh, well, that's not an option because it's already written in VAC. So I can't recall... maybe we are back to... I think we are actually back to Locksmith's Dream again, as much as I feel a little silly doing that. Okay, let me just get back. Now, I forgot to do the Natan desk as well. So we've got 1, 2, 3. So technically 4. Now I just need to find 1 more Knock or Rose. And I guess Salt is the best option there. Now, in anticipation of the fact that we're going to be getting insects and nectars, and I acknowledge that this is quite premature because we still need to actually read the text, but I'm also going to queue up some, basically any free, I'll say free in the sense that Denzel won't be able to generate them, but I'm going to generate any of the free moon or nectar that I can to level this up, because that will be important as the day goes by. Okay. So Confounding Parables we've already got. We don't have the Contradictions yet, and I think in this case I'm just going to start with an Exorcist Field Manual again. We're already working on the Salt. Those aren't read yet. Solace, Beguiling Melodies, Stolen Secrets, that we could potentially get from Denzel. And Bittersweet Certainty doesn't really help me out here. Okay, so that gives me something to start with. And then on top of that, we will have this room open up, so we'll have a little bit of work to do on that front as well. But for now, I think we're ready to see what the weather is. Hail, all right. If it can do something interesting, I'd be willing to throw it into some kind of a task, but I think at the moment here I don't really have any need for what the hail can get me. So, as usual, we'll speak to Denzel. We may still consider leveling him up, but that's not the main priority for today. Speak to Denzel, he might even reply. Alright, and this isn't a huge surprise to me. I couldn't remember if there were books, but it kind of felt like there were. There is, by the way, a fun... is it this one, or is it... I think this is it. There's a bit of a story with collars, and one of his notes here. Our friend Julian Cosley. Alright. So the other thing that I'll want to do is some cataloging. So we'll definitely use... actually, you know, we can use metal to catalog all these other ones, but I think... we can do at least 1 more. The remaining question would be, do I want to risk it and apply... I'm not really going to do that much with the Arab otherwise, so This book was probably written around the time of Hush House's nocturnal period, after the turn of the century. If I examine it, I can learn more about what knowledge it might contain. Alright, so what room did we just unlock? The Adept Cell. 77 days in the Cucurbit was considered enough to soften the passions of the most unrepentant adept. After that, they were usually charged and tried in closed court, very occasionally released, sometimes taken upstairs for one of Collar's experimental interviews. Inside the room we have... Alice licit tibi non licit. To us it is permitted, to you it is not permitted, the motto of the Suppression Bureau. The Adept Cell Bed. A bed stamped with sigils to discourage access to the mansis in Dream. So this would take scale. Got a quire of paper. The Silent Typewriter, an unusual custom device. Bottled Candle, an admirable combination of two utterly disparate elements. Quite genius. A prison stool, a cheerful lavender color, possibly to encourage rehabilitative enthusiasm. And Julian Cosley. Julian is known to be winter-long. At a prescribed date, his hour patron will ensure him a beautiful ending, but until then, he is even harder than most long to dispose of finally. That said, he is known to have been defeated by an Ascendant Long in the 1920s, and his true current status, a diminished survivor, a determined memory, something else, is the subject of esoteric debate. And we've also opened up a path to the Trapped Cell. A sign outside the cell reads, "Warning, do not enter while safety measures are armed." So the fact that this has 13 edge intrigues me. So what could I do with Denzel to make this work? So Denzel will start with 2 edge. And we can add to that the metal for 1. So that gives us 3. And I'm trying to remember if I think we can only do 1 edge from a tool. Now, if I was willing to use the Perinculate, and I should be able to I should be willing to because I do have the tools required to make it, I may be able to bump that up, but let's just leave that aside for now. And then the weather. So, all told, it's actually not as much as you'd think. So 2 edge, a metal gives us 3, a tool gives us 4, the weather gives us 7, and we're looking to get 13. So essentially I'm looking for some combination of food and drink. I guess I would also be able to use metal in this case, although I'd be a little reluctant to give up I think it's the steel? Yeah. So if I can come up with some clever way of generating a lot of edge through food and drink, effectively, I'd be looking for a 3 and a 2. I can consider... Well, okay, so the acrid marrow is one thing, but it's only one. Actually, the best thing that I can do here would just be to bring up my... Nope. Sorry, someone is really aggressive with their use of Discord notifications, and it just pulled me out, so my apologies. Where are we? Okay, got it. So I also realized I haven't looked at all of there was some marketing material for Book of Hours, and I know I haven't actually seen all of the goodies available. All right, so any edge hopes that I have are pretty much dashed with my my current food list here. So we've got the knot cake, which is good for 2 edge, and the honey haunted amber pumpkin pie, which is 2 edge. So neither of those are going to give me what I need for the boost. I can obviously look in other places. So there's, I guess, the cuckoo honey. Well, that would give me another 2. And I'm sure somewhere in terms of so that would be sustenance. Okay, Schloss Jennings. Well, we can get 4. So it's funny. this might actually be worth taking a second to figure out. I guess the thing is I don't have a lot of tools with an extra 2 edge. So I mean, then I suppose the answer would be how willing am I to give up the steel wire? It's not the end of the world if I give it up, but there's also no major urgency for me to do this through Edge, because I can just hire Reverend Timothy with the Sacrament Assite and get sufficient knock. I think I'm gonna let Denzel do his thing. He'll be my memory farm for today. All right, I've carried the memory like a flambeau safe through the mazes of night. With the time we have left, I'll try and make some progress in terms of the leveling we want to do. It is also, I'm slightly biased in terms of the books that I want to read. So there's practical reasons for not wanting to read the 3 and the 3 and the Journey to the Grove yet, but I don't believe in this playthrough we've had the pleasure of identifying all of Collar's unique and interesting traits. So I'd kind of like to get to the point where we start learning a little bit more about the Administrator. Okay, Singlefoot songs. Father Stanislav John Schaller, priest and diplomat, writes of his time on the slopes of Huashan, near the Grove of Green Immortals, but never too near. So this is a hill and hollow, which I believe we have not yet committed to the Tree of Wisdoms yet. Although this would be one that I think on my list I would count as something... let me just take a look. Yeah, so Hill and Hollow is one of those ones that's on a... actually, any skill at a minimum would be on a 3. So in fact, I think this one I might just start reading full stop. Maybe stick it up on the shelf here. We already have the fear, so it's not that difficult. Okay, the Skeleton Songs, poems of greedy delight composed by the possibly pseudonymous Arbella Dusk, the rumored heiress turned madam turned poetess. So we've already committed Resurgences and Emergences, which is what we have here. So I'm going to do something a little unusual. I'm going to take the Queens of the Rivers, and I'm going to put it back on the shelf. Oh dear. This is a very odd placement. All right. And that's just to make room for the Skeleton Songs, which is definitely more consistent with what I'm using this shelf for. And we have the Book of the Centipede. In the mid-1860s, one Madame Yee presented an entertainment based, she claimed, on this book. Now, I don't believe we have sand stories. Probably Rose would be the best one to search by. Sand stories is not an easy one for me to get, if I recall correctly, so... that is also going to be on my to-read list. So I'm a little worried now that I've overcommitted myself. But I think this is achievable. So again, with 1 minute, sorry, not 1 minute, in 2 seconds now, we'll have a bunch of deliverables in terms of the memories for leveling up Preliminal Meter. That'll free up the desks to be able to read Book of the Centipede and Singlefoot Songs. All right, An Echo of Silence, a very heterodox history of the House of Leith is recorded by the Serenity, a Leithan adept who declares that the House of Leith was created explicitly to prevent the ascension of any more mortals to name or hour status. Eternity cannot be escaped, but in history it may be delayed. The Serenity explains the gods who were flesh by their nature are a surrender to eternity. The roots of the house are said to pass into the Wood of Dreams through 3 forests in the Bounds, identified as the Baelai, the Black Cedar Forest, and the Brecaliant. While one tree of these may yet stand, one single tree, the histories continue. Sorry, I kind of stumbled over reading that, but... As I used to say in my youth, the day is done and so am I, but I've earned my pay. Now I'm probably going to want to have a few elements of the soul by the end of today, so we'll keep going with the cycle and the sweet bones. On the matter and deeds of serpents, this was probably the prophecies of the Naga, rendered into English and illustrated by William Midnight in Paris in the 1880s, but it shows a number of divergences from that text. It's certainly quite recent by the standards of ACT texts. The serpent folk, called the Great Hooded Princes, came to know the order called the House of Leith and warred across the miles with them. They made an alliance with the mother of ants, whose children they had been. The text describes how the Great Hooded Princes escaped, or will escape, from the Fifth History where they had died, or were doomed to die. They engaged in a secret conquest of the land of the Great River, called India in some histories, and have ensured that all other conquests of that land are false conquests. The Crossing to Noon, the mystic Garcia Sowry gives a picturesque account of the adventures of Franklin Bancroft, Prince of Wines, and Ava de Wolf, the Pale Lady, on their way to the hidden island of Noon. For a long time, the Blackbone pondered her next move, until the moon dared to peep from behind a cloud, and the prince completed the composition of his third sestina. But the lady met at the blind gaze of its open pores, waiting for the tide. Garcia Sowry acknowledges in an epilogue that it is widely known that Ava in fact tragically drowned herself and her twin infant granddaughters without ever making such a journey. But he adds contemptuously, it is also widely known that the city unbuilt will so remain, that only one history is ever written, and that Janus is a Mansus prank. The Locksmith's Dream, Portions and Proportions, the second volume of Teresa Galmier's examination of parallels in the mystic dreams of artisans. The frontispiece has been slashed with a razor. In this volume, Galmier records fewer dreams and explicates more on her own elaborate theories. We see this again and again. What is below can't escape what is above. The finest artisans all dream of the white door in the end. I'm no artisan, only a scholar. I think there's a secret that all these artisans know, but I think that secret is only half the story. An Exorcist's Field Manual, a practical guide to troublesome dead, grounded in theory, but with a clear focus on their disposal, by the redoubtable Detective Austieri Wheellock of the Suppression Bureau. The dead usually avoid light as the most immediate manifestation of eternity, which has no place for death. However, those dead uplifted by gold, that is to say touched by an actinic theoplasma, happily bought about in daylight and are perhaps strongest at noon. If you are dead but uplifted by green, that's the Ring-Use blessing. The crown growth offers a similar but nastier benefit. This is how burgeoning risen come about, but there are different degrees of sentience and freedom depending on which growths are involved. The consciousness of one uplifted by green is always greatly altered, though. They never really seem like the same person. They may have dregs of their original souls, but they are often replaced by something else. The upshot, invariably, is that they need to be set firmly on fire. Okay. So, we've got one more. The Raptures of Forculus, the first volume of Abbot Geoffrey's hypothetical theological debates in the Socratic mode. If Janus were an hour, Forculus might be counted among his names, but that door remains closed, and so Forculus is not. Geoffrey discusses the signs that mark doors, which might permit or forbid access to certain thoughts and dreams, speculating carefully on which of the sanctioned hours might teach or govern each sign. So let's get the preliminary meter moving, because that's going to be one of my bigger costs for today. I don't know if there's any trades that I want to do in terms of the content here, so we will also apply a FET. Actually, sorry, I don't need to apply a FET because we've got lots of shops too, so at last I'm something of an authority in this. Okay. So the next priority is to start reading all of these books that I want. Now, I may be overcommitting myself today, but I think we're early enough in the day that I can get through all of these. I do just want to make sure that I have something of a realistic plan, though. So for Singlefoot Songs, because it's a 6, we know that we're going to be able to level up Hill and Hollow using two memories. So all told, we're probably going to be committing 4 memories to the reading of this. However, we don't need to commit like a health to reading this because we've already got enough scale. In fact, let's figure that out here. So, Coil and Chasm's too short. Well, I can do that, and then I can add the Serpent-style glass. So then out of Lantern Scale, Sky, and Winter, we've got 3 Whist, we've got 3 Fost. Can't see a lot of uses for Fost right now, so we'll start reading Singlefoot songs that way. So same argument here, Book of the Centipede. This one's easier to commit a Fet to, although I don't necessarily have to because I've already got a big, well, I won't say a big, but a sufficient Rose skill. But in this case, you know, we might as well, right? So Path and Pilgrim, yeah, that'll do the trick. So maybe Strings and... I keep forgetting Strings and Songs isn't a Rose. Oh, now that's interesting. So Path and Pilgrim seems to be the furthest I've gone with my Rose. Very interesting. Okay. So yeah, Path and Pilgrim it is. I don't need to make this complicated. And then the one that's a little bit of a risk, but I think a tolerable risk, would be to try and read the Cucurbit Prisoner Records 1927. So we'll give up a health for that, which is, in this case, is a fairly precious item, but it's one I'm willing to do. So the best memory I could get for this would be the Impulse. So we'll take our Drums and Dances, and then finally we will employ the Bronze Knife, a long knife of age-darkened metal with a teak handle inlaid with bone. It could be a hunting knife, although it's certainly no older than the 19th century. It's not clear why anyone might have chosen to make a hunting knife out of bronze in the 19th century. So the problem here is that I'm going to have to babysit this. So if I don't remember to occasionally check in and make sure that I feed this the memory or the, what is it? Sorry, the memory, the, I can't believe I'm, memory, element of the soul, furniture. Anyways, the usual things that we run into. That will be rather sad. So Hill and Hollow needs Scale and Moon. The Fear will help there. We are committing to improving insects and nectars. So we'll need 4 items for that. We're already on the way with the Contradiction. This is going to be the one that I put the focus in terms of generating memories. Scent Stories sort of resolves itself. So, okay, here's what we'll do. We'll say 1 Tryst for insects and nectars. Not sure how I feel about... I'll do a 2nd Tryst here. And I think what I'll do here is I'll try and earn whatever moon I can get for insects and nectars, but I'll leave the actual nectar side of the equation to Denzel. Actually, no, because I may be able to use that impulse during the challenges anyway. So, all right, Debate of 7 Cups it is. Maybe a waste, but again, kind of a calculated risk. It's one I'm willing to take on here. I guess now we need to use the Fost. So again, we're looking for Moon. We've already got the Contradiction. I don't want to do Intuition because we may get that from Denzel, but Confounding Parables will work. Can give up a metal here. All right, so it looks like it's just the salt, and then I think we're out of options for insects and nectars. The last 2 that I could look at, so Hill and Hollow is a tricky one because we don't really have any exclusive scale. Well, again, there's some things that I could generate to get that, but it's not high on the list. Yeah. Okay, so I'm sort of letting a couple things hang here in terms of the various desks. I feel like I should maybe be doing a little bit more I was trying to think, is there a piece of art I could be looking at right now? But I don't need forge. I don't need lantern. I mean, I suppose I could. Oh yeah, I could get some nectar from the scent actually. So I'll make sure to look at the plant afterwards, or sniff the plant, I guess, if it's scent. But I think we're in a solid spot right now. So really, what this is going to be, we'll let a few of the details play out. I'm going to need to. The longest thing I'm going to be waiting for will be reading all of these books, and there's a real danger that I'm going to forget to check in on the hedge of thorns here. But for the rest of today, I think the most sensible thing for me to do would be to focus on the skills that I can level up. And one of the reasons I want to do that is this is my last chance to grab some stuff out of the garden before winter. So I wouldn't be sad if I took the 5 here, like the core and the health, and I angled that towards harvesting some plants and maybe some vegetables. Anyways, all of that will be handled later on in the week. Thank you for sitting through a bit of an extended episode. I will be back. There should at least be an episode for Wednesday, and then the rest of this will be a question in terms of whether or not I can get the remaining 2 recorded. So I would expect I'll see you Wednesday. As for the rest of the week, I'll do my best, but I wanted to at least acknowledge that there may be a couple of interruptions on that, depending on how well I can get my act together. Until then, enjoy the day off, and see you then. Take care.